Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mum and Son Run podcast. This year's London Marathon will be taking place on the 27th of April, and we wanted to dedicate a full episode to the London Marathon. My mum was lucky enough to run it last year, so she gives all of her top tips and tricks to getting the most out of this experience. We really hope that you enjoy it. Let's get straight into it. Episode 7, we're back. How are you, Mum?
Very well, thank you, son. And how is yourself?
I'm all good, I'm all good. So you've got some exciting news and progress to tell everybody about.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a milestone week in terms of my injury. So on Monday, I managed to leg press 110 kilos, which is exactly what I'd leg pressed on my uninjured leg at the start of my rehab. And I've been building up to equaling out the strength. So that was milestone number one, or significant moment number one in the week. And then the second one was I had a physio session the same day, later on that day. And as a result of my progress and the strength that I've now got, another 2 weeks, and I'm actually able to start week one of a run walk or walk run rehab program. And I'll be able to do, all being well, a whopping 3 minutes in total of running. So 6 times 30 seconds. And it doesn't sound a lot, but it's 3 minutes more than I'm doing at the moment. So I'm very excited to be at this stage. Really, it's been a good week. And then last week, as you know, we were in the Lake District, and I think we walked about 26 miles during the week, and I managed in total 6,000 feet of ascent with no detriment to my Achilles. So again, it's been a really positive couple of weeks, and it's been that kind of time that makes me realize the benefit of sitting on my backside with that boot on for 6 weeks
Yeah.
with my leg raised. It's the benefits of that are now coming to fruition. So that's been good. How's your week been? How's the 5K training plan going?
It's going good. Managing to make progress week on week. The mileage has gone up. The intensity of the speed sessions has increased. So I'm actually going to be racing or running the Lime Park run this weekend just as a gauge to see where I'm at. So that's exciting, but it's all going well. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good to see you back out on the hills and the lakes and back, being mobile and just as the weather gets good. And it's no coincidence that you're in the position you're in because of all the work you've done and all the effort you've done to like getting rid of that imbalance and strengthening your weaker leg. And, you know, um,
Without a doubt.
it's going to be really cool to have you back out there running, and I'll be alongside you on your jog walk, trying to keep up.
Yeah. Up. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a nervousness every time I move to the next stage. So now I'm on jumping exercises, and I was terrified when I first started the jumping exercises because I've not put that kind of impact through my Achilles
Yeah.
since I was running before it snapped in October last year.
It's always going to be scary going through those stages, but you've done it right. You've done it at the right speed. You've not tried to skip any stages. So you're exactly where you should be. You've built up that strength, and now your Achilles is going to be ready to get back into some running. So we just got to build it up slowly. And yeah, it's going to be fun. But I'm actually really excited to get into this episode because we're going to be talking all about the London Marathon, which you ran last year, and 57,000 people will be running this month on the 27th, which is just a crazy number of people. That'll be a world record. And they broke the record last year as well. So 840,000 people applied to run this year's London Marathon, which just tells you the moment that running is having, the interest that has built up in running marathons and endurance running. So it's great to see. And I'm really excited for this year's London Marathon because there's quite a lot of hype around it from the elite field. Like, I don't think there's ever been a better lineup of elite runners. And there's a runner called Jacob Kiplomo, and he quite recently ran a sub 57-minute half marathon. So there's a lot of hype and expectation, and if the conditions are right and if he shows up at his best, that we could see the first sub 2 hour marathon in competition, which would be really special. And to top that off,
Yeah.
Alex Yee, the gold
Yeah.
medal
Triathlete.
triathlete, will be running in the marathon as well, and he's been
Yeah.
dedicating himself to running instead of, running, swimming, cycling. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he does because he's a amazing runner. As a youngster, he was one of the elite runners before he turned
Yeah.
his head to triathlons. But um, I've been doing some research and getting some stats because I want this episode to be really educational and inspiring and motivating for anybody who's going to be running or spectating or even watching on the TV this year. So 57,000 people will be running it this year. So the last person to cross the finish line last year was a man called Fred, who was in his 90s, and he crossed the finish line at 12:10 a.m. They actually they opened a second finish line last year to make sure that people could all get through in whatever time they were running. And they actually had scheduled the finish line to close at 12. But there was one man left out on the track, Fred, in his 90s, and he was running a marathon in memory of his daughter who had died 40 years earlier. So they kept the finish line open, and he crossed the finish line at 10 past 12 in the morning. What an
Wow.
amazing story. And it just like kind of sums up what the London Marathon is all about. It's about raising money. It's
Yeah.
about people pushing their limits, and it actually, I think, it's holds the record for the most money raised in one day for a marathon. I think, which is pretty crazy and special. And I know that this year the sponsored charity is pancreatic cancer, and they're raising a lot of money for that this year. So it's a really good cause. So let's talk about your experience with the London Marathon because obviously you ran it last year. So talk us through getting to London on the Friday and working your way towards that start line and how
Yeah.
that felt.
Yeah, so we travelled down on the Friday morning, and opted to go by train. And I'm glad we did really. I think um, there were lots of people on the train making their way down, so that was the first kind of little buzz of London, even boarding the train in Stockport. Um, so yeah, we got down on the Friday. We opted to stay close to Euston, and you can read a phenomenal amount of information online about, the logistics of the marathon. So I'm just going to tell it as I did it and how I think it worked for me. My thought process was we were on the Monday going to be getting the train back from Euston, so I opted to be somewhere close to the station on the Monday, just in case my legs weren't particularly working very well.
Smart
I
move.
did not want to be traipsing half the way across London on a busy Monday morning, so stayed close to London in an apartment, so didn't have far to go getting off the train. And I hadn't really had any nerves. I think because none of my running friends were coming down with me. One running friend was actually, and I'll come on to that as part of the experience later, but we didn't go down together. We didn't particularly train together. We did meet up in London. And I think nerves can come when you start talking to people about an event you're both doing, or a few of you were doing, but because nobody else was doing it, I didn't really get that paranoia. I didn't really get too many nerves until my feet hit the platform in Euston Station, and then all of a sudden, I don't know why, nothing specific happened, but my stomach started to churn over, and the nerves just came out of nowhere and took me by surprise, really. So that was the first thing. And to this day, I don't know why that happened. So that was the kind of the journey down there and the where we were staying, a few minutes from Euston Station. And really, it, I suppose, starts out like any other weekend in London, of which I've had many, food out and all that kind of thing, being mindful of kind of getting the carbs in, etc. And then on the Saturday morning, I had a 30-minute easy run in my plan. So got up nice and early and headed out for a little run, and there were quite a few people obviously doing the same thing. So yeah, there's that feeling of being in a club, that running can give you, whether you're literally in a running club or whether you're just out on the road and you see other people doing the same thing as you. So yeah, so I boxed off a 30-minute easy and it felt good. The weather was good. Yeah, and then it was the next part of the experience was off to the expo. So going to pick up my number. And of course, for those who are running London or in the future, maybe lucky enough to get a place in London, make sure that you take your identification with you because you need it to pick your number up at London. So if I'd have got there and I hadn't got anything, driving license or passport to show them, I'd have been turned away. So that's an important element of going to the expo.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to put
Um,
in only to be turned away at the expo, isn't it?
it absolutely would be, and devastating because you would have to, if you didn't have ID with you, as I say, you would be turned away and you'd have to go and find some. And if you hadn't taken some to London, so when you're thinking about packing kit, etc., make sure ID is kind of on your list of things to take with you. And that's when the real buzz, you're jumping on the Docklands Light Railway down to the expo, and obviously you are surrounded by people all doing the same thing, all going to pick their numbers up. So you really do start to get that buzz. Again, some nerves come with that, but actually, when you start talking to people, which I did on the DLR, that in itself kind of helps to settle the nerves a little bit. Just chatting to people, where they've come from, you know, have they done it before? What are they expecting to get out of the marathon? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really nice to kind of get talking to people who are experiencing it, particularly those doing it for the first time, like me. I was lucky enough that one of my good running friends was at the expo representing Decathlon and their running brand, which is Kit Run. So, it was lovely to be able to go and say hello to Dawn and get, all the kind of best wishes from her. Um, and then go over and there's a big wall with everyone's name on. Um, and the first mistake I made was there's two walls, one wall with the names of everybody running, and the second wall is those who are going to be picking up the 6-star major medal. So I went to the wrong wall because I didn't look at it properly and started to look through the names and got to the S's and thought, I'm not on here, I've got my number, so I knew I was running, but I'm not on here. And then all of a sudden I thought, why am I not on this wall? And then realised it was a 6-star major. So that's amazing to see how many people are kind of hunting their way through, and London's going to be there, the icing on the cake. For them in terms of the 6-star medal. So eventually found my name on the wall, and there's just something about when you do that at an expo. Don't know really why it makes it special, but just to see your name in there with lots of other surrounded by a million other names, just brings home the enormity when it takes you forever to kind of work your way just through the S's. So you start to get that sense of just how many people are doing this
Yeah, and just being part of
this
something
thing.
that's so huge is
Yeah.
it feels great and
Yeah.
it's exciting, yeah. So what happened after the expo, the Saturday night you probably went out and filled your face with pasta or pizza, I imagine.
We went to the theatre, believe it or not. So the running friend I was talking about earlier, we met up with her and her hubby, and we went off. We took the opportunity, not having the opportunity to just nip into London to to go to the West End, we'd booked tickets for a theatre show and headed off for a matinee performance, followed by some carbs and an early night, to be honest, after
That's
that.
some
So
bougie carb loading going on there.
yeah, I
Very
think.
nice.
Yeah, it was, and it was nice to kind of, again, it's not just about the run. The run's part of the weekend, but it can be whatever you want it to be, really. And for us, for me and for Jane, both lovers of the theatre, it was a good opportunity to go and see a top West End show. So
Make a
we
proper
did.
weekend
And
of it.
absolutely, absolutely.
And then I guess like the next step is getting to the start line. So waking up from where
Yeah,
you were near Euston Station, how
yeah.
easy was it logistically to get to the start line? What was the atmosphere and experience like?
I think the experience was easy because it was all planned out in advance. So I knew exactly, from where we were staying. I knew which of the tube stations to head for. I knew where we were getting, which line we were on, which direction we were heading in, um, where we were changing. I think we had one change down towards the Thames Bank, it might have been. Don't quote me on it. And then jumping on the tube then down to Greenwich. It was easy, and it was the nerves started to go then because you're focusing then on getting yourself, you're all ready, your kit's been out the night before, you've done all of that, you're in your kit, you're on the way. There's nothing really to think about other than getting yourself down to that start line and then putting one foot in front of the other. So the nerves start to kind of, I mean, they do come and go a little bit, I think, on any race day, but particularly on this day. But I found it easy to get to the start line, and there's obviously everyone's heading in the same direction.
Yeah.
So getting off the tube, then you're heading for your zone. So which they're all clearly marked. There's no end of people around to help you should you need some help, whether that's official kind of volunteers for the London Marathon or whether that's people that are running the London Marathon themselves. So and then there's that time where you can only go so far with whoever your supporter is. So I could only take Ian so far before I had to go off and find my own way the rest of the way. So that can be a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, because if you're like me and you don't know anybody else in your wave, and you're on your own, then there's a moment where you've got to say your goodbyes and you'll see them at the finish, and then it starts to become very, very real. Then I think,
Yeah.
there's that kind of moment where I'm doing it, I'm really doing it. And so, yeah, so I said my goodbyes to Ian and off I went into the wave, and you know, again, backdrops, everything's made super easy for you. Um, and you've got that moment then, depending on the weather, where if you haven't taken an item of clothing with you which you're happy to discard, you've got to think about if it's not warm enough for you to take all the layers off and kind of drop your bag off at the bag drop. You should really consider kind of what the weather's like and taking something with you, either an old piece of clothing, or if you can get hold of one of the foil blankets, which is what I'd done. I'd taken a foil blanket, um, and dropped my bag off and made my way over to the pen, the holding pen, where they move you through various stages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
that's a good point to make for anybody kind of running their first marathon is there can be a bit of a chunk of time between dropping your bag off and the start of the race. And if you've not
yeah,
taken a layer, you can be stood around and you can get quite cold, and that can be using up
yeah,
energy that you'll really want to be using in the race.
yeah,
So just being
yeah,
organized,
definitely.
take something that you're willing to get rid of, and it usually goes to charity, I think, just to make sure that you're not kind of freezing on the start line.
Yeah, yeah, and it was quite nippy. Um, I can't remember what time I went out. I think I went out something like 10:40. But even at that time, it's April. Um, it was a clear day, but it wasn't warm. Um, and the good thing is about certainly the wave that I was in was that you could actually see other waves heading down towards the start. So there was lots of encouragement for people who were just heading down for, to start their marathon adventure. So you could actually give people a good cheer. And I helped a guy on with he was trying to put a fancy dress outfit on. He was running, I want to say it's a dinosaur, but I could be having a flashback to Pennington Flash Park
Yeah,
Run, to be
I was gonna
honest.
say.
Um, it was something similar, and he was trying to get the zip up the back. So I went and helped him to get the fancy dress outfit on, and he was telling me about he was running for charity, and he was telling me a little bit about the charity he was running for, and then off he went, and then um, you've got all the kind of the queues for the loos and all that kind of thing. Don't do what I did, which was I got in a queue, I didn't really look. And then a gentleman said to me, could I just tell you that you're in the men's queue for the loo? So do just make sure
How
that, because
dare he
like I'm a,
assume, Mum,
well,
that you aren't a
well,
man?
yeah. I'm a typical Brit. If I see a queue, I just joined it.
Yeah.
I've just thought this is the toilet queue. And it never occurred to me that there were, like, because at most races, you just line up for the loos and then the porta cabins. So I think I just assumed.
Yeah.
And as as they say about
Shame on
assuming, it
him.
makes an ass out
Shame
of
on
you,
him.
you and me.
You can't.
But it was very nice of him because actually he saved me a long wait in that queue.
Yeah.
So I headed off to the ladies' queue, which was enormous. And then I realised that actually there was another option, and they'd got Shewees. So those are like a standing toilet for ladies, and they'd had them at Barcelona, so I was familiar with them from the Barcelona Marathon. And the queue was tiny for the Shewees, so I literally walked up, and 5 minutes later, I was out of the toilet queue,
Yeah.
which can be handy if it's a small queue, because 10 minutes later, you feel like you need to go to the loo again. So yeah, it's better than waiting in a
Yeah.
long queue for a porta
I
cabin.
do feel for the ladies when they have to queue for the Portaloos because it's so easy for a man to just, up
Yeah,
against a tree or whatever, and
yeah,
the queues are
yeah,
just so long, and the wait is so long, and that's the last thing you really want for your nerves is to be, oh, is
yeah,
this queue going to go down in time for the race to start? So,
yeah,
yeah, that sounds ideal. The Shiwis, not that I would know what's going on there, but if anything
yeah,
to kind of make things move a bit quicker and give different
yeah.
options. So yeah, that sounds like it's an ideal setup at the start line. So
It
as
was.
somebody who hasn't ran the London Marathon, you kind of hear about how crowded it is. People might say, don't run London if you want a PB, or, expect to be walking at points, or don't expect much elbow room. And, so when that race finally started and you crossed the start line, what was it like?
I think the start line is pretty much like any other marathon in that every start line to a marathon is busy, and there's lots of people, so it didn't feel any different really. The klaxon goes and off you go, and you're pretty much surrounded by other people. And it was no different to Manchester, Barcelona, to Rome. They were all similarly busy at the very start of the marathon. I think it's only as London goes on that you realise it's going to stay that busy, whereas other marathons thin out. In my experience, London didn't.
Mm.
It doesn't thin out. So it stays particularly busy. I wouldn't say that you suffer from a lack of elbow room. You've got plenty of room, but you are very conscious of the position of other runners on the road. I dare say if you're in the elite field and you're at the front, you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And perhaps at other points in the run, depending on, what your time is, and as somebody who's around the 4-hour marathon mark, perhaps there is, that's a very popular time to want to achieve. So there's lots of people running at your pace,
I
and
did think that
yeah,
because I'd say the average time is between that 4 hour, 4:30, maybe between 4 and
yeah,
5 hours. So maybe it is just where, the average time has the kind of, it's the most busy there. So that would make
yeah,
sense. But it also makes sense that if they have a record number of people running, as much as they are putting things in place to try and make it less busy by having different waves and making sure it's all organized in that way, there's still 57,000 people running around the track. So you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel that it's a bit busier. But
yeah, definitely.
talk us through the starts of that race then, and how that went, and do any moments stand out to you in the London Marathon? You hear a lot about, and I don't know when it is in the race, but about crossing the bridge. Seems to be a
Tower
pretty
Bridge.
special moment. So talk us through your
Yeah,
experience in the race and how it went.
I think the first thing that I realized that was going to be different to other marathons is the noise levels. It's absolutely phenomenal
Uh,
from start to finish. The the kind of the support is unreal. But noisy support, whether that's people shouting, clapping, whether that's musical instruments, whether it's people banging a drum, whatever it is, there is just a wall of sound. And I can remember, I think the first part of the race that I really remember, and the first part that stuck with me, was running through Greenwich. And yeah, just that feeling that the crowd is almost like, I mean, because it's a road, so they're on the pavement, and they're 10 deep in places, maybe more. I don't really know. That's how it feels, is that there's just a wall of people. And I can remember just running down this road, and all I could just hear this. It's almost overwhelming,
uh,
the level of noise that you get, and that's your first sense of, because you set out, and yes, there's people around the Greenwich Park area, but it's not until you're a few miles into I'd say probably 5K in, that you suddenly have that feeling, oh my God, this is like nothing that I've ever experienced before, and yeah, the banners, that's another thing. One of the things that I used to distract myself kind of during the run was looking out for the funniest banner, because people hold some hilarious banners up. Um, and yeah, so that would make you smile. Um, and then there are, there's those well-known landmarks. So Tower Bridge is one for sure. It's a bit like when people say, "Oh, go to the Taj Mahal, it's amazing," and you wonder if it's as amazing as people say, or if it's all a load of hype. Tower Bridge is a very special moment, because as you turn, and you just suddenly see the bridge is there, and I had no sense of where I was,
uh,
because I don't know London that well. Um, and to turn, and there it is in front of you. And that was quite a really special moment. Cutty Sark obviously is another one. And for me, the one that took me by surprise, that I wasn't expecting to like have the same experience as Tower Bridge and Cutty Sark, was Canary Wharf, because I'd been told that that's where it could get a little bit quiet. Well, it wasn't quiet on this day, not from a runner's perspective, and not from a crowd perspective. And because you've got the tall buildings, the noise is just bouncing off the buildings. And again, it's another overwhelming moment,
uh.
of people just screaming and shouting. And yeah,
Well, I hope that that's
it
still in the track, because the only thing that's been mentioned, the slight change to the track this year, is around Canary Wharf. So let's hope that they keep
Yeah.
that in if it's a really cool moment.
Yeah, it was well known for being like a quieter part of the course, from a spectator perspective, but obviously as the marathon grows in popularity, there are no probably, well, I didn't experience any quiet parts of the course either from a runner or a spectator perspective.
Yeah.
But and then I suppose the last special moment is coming towards the finish. So heading down embankment, you can see Big Ben, um, and well, I was pretty goosed by them, but that just gives you a little bit of a lift. And then coming down towards Buckingham Palace, and I'd got my name on my t-shirt. I'd got one of those iron-on things, so I'd iron my name on the front and back of my t-shirt, and I could hear there was a group at the side, and they were obviously picking a runner and chanting that runner's name until that runner looked over, and acknowledged them in some way. And of course, by this time, I'm in my, oh
I hate
God,
crowds mode.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I could hear them chanting, Kath, Kath, Kath. And and I thought, well, they can't be shouting at me because they don't know me. And as I turned to look, they all went, yay! And that was one of those moments where you think you've got nothing left in the legs, and somebody doing something like that, all of a sudden my legs got this second wind. And I'm not saying that I ran phenomenally faster. I think my last mile was 8:44, so it wasn't particularly fast, but it certainly wasn't my slowest mile either. But it just gives you that little boost. And then the rest, as they say, is history. You'll have seen it a million times. You turn the corner at Buckingham Palace and you run down the mile and finish.
Wow.
But going back a little bit to around between mile 21 and 23, I think, at some point, because I hadn't seen any of the family. So obviously, I had family out on the course looking to cheer me on. And they should have been, well, they were at Greenwich, but I didn't see them. And I'd given up kind of any thoughts of I'm gonna be able to um to get a boost from a family cheer.
Mm.
I'd given up any thoughts of that. I just thought that's not going to happen. And then between those miles, I could hear someone shouting, "Mum, Mum!" And obviously, the name Mum doesn't particularly make me turn around, because I'm sure that
Yeah, you weren't the only mum
thousands
running
of
that day.
I wasn't the only mum running that day, but there was just something, and I didn't particularly recognise Chris's voice, but something just made me turn, because I could hear this mum, and as I turned, Chris, was running down the side of the route, and waving away, and it turned out he'd legged it halfway across London to try, and because I'd not seen them at Greenwich, he'd legged it to make sure that I got someone to give me a cheer, which I have to say is probably the most special moment
Yeah, fair
that
play to
there was.
Chris. Yeah, that's the most running he's done in
Yeah,
in in quite a while, so fair play to him. But they did
yeah,
say, so I wasn't there that day, unfortunately, but the family that did go down to spectate, all of them said, I would rather run the marathon next year than spectate. So I think the logistics of moving around and then trying to
yeah,
see your runner are quite challenging, as you can expect. London is busy at the best of times. So I guess being
yeah,
organised. But one thing that the race director said is if you're trying to stand out so that you can kind of communicate with who you're trying to see, have like a banner or something that is unique. So maybe you're holding a
yeah,
certain color balloon or a certain type of
yeah,
banner or something unique that will get the attention of the runner, and then the runner can spot you. Because I guess the only downside of having such big crowds is that it makes it so difficult to spot your family, because in most marathons it's pretty easy. You'll have quiet
yeah,
spells and you'll have a bit of space, but with London, it's 5 or 6 deep from the first step, because I think each runner brings on average 5.4 spectators. So you can only imagine how busy it is. And that's going
Yeah,
to be even more this year with more runners
yeah.
running.
And
So
I had more. I in that case had more than the average because
exactly.
I had there was more than five. Well, you can't have point 0.4 of a person, but
No.
there was more than five. So and of course you think you're going to stand out. I thought in an orange running vest and purple shorts, I stand out. Well, you don't, because you think you're unique. There's a million people in orange vests,
Yeah.
maybe not in the purple shorts, but the fancy dress that is out there on the course is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And obviously the messages, people's reasons for running that are attached to their outfits, that's another thing that, as you're running along, you can, you get a real boost from kind of reading somebody else's story, really. It's not your story, but it just gives you that kind of, one, it gives you a moment where you're not thinking about running, and two, it just tells you what it means to people, to run this race. I wasn't running, for a charity this time round. I was running for the pure fun of it. But so going back to what we were talking about, it's very difficult to stand out in the London Marathon, and it probably is easier for the runner to spot the family than the family to spot the runner.
Yeah.
In all honesty, and we could be on this podcast for hours, and I could think of a million and one kind of special things about the marathon. And I'm sure everybody will have their own kind of different different special moments, but those are the ones that kind of spring out to me,
Yeah. And so for somebody
for sure.
who's running London for the first time, what what advice would you give them in terms of maybe something you didn't know, or just advice in general?
Be prepared for the noise levels. It's an absolute wall of sound. There's only one place where you go under a tunnel where all you can hear is feet, and then again that's eerie because you go from bright sunlight, or daylight at least, into a dark tunnel. So there's a little bit of a adjustment there, and then there's an adjustment because the noise just falls away and then it comes back again. So definitely be ready for the wall of sound. Be ready for the sheer volume of people running and the need to just be really mindful of where you are at all times. There are various points on the course where they funnel the runners together. So there's different start lines at London, and at certain points the course merges. So there will be kind of little bits of bottlenecks there. So you'll just need to be aware that that's going to happen. Um, there seem to be, for me, many more water stations at London than there are in other marathons, and I lost count of. I'd made an agreement with my running coach that I was going to take water on at every other station, and there were so many, I lost count of whether I'd had water at the last station or the one before, and I ended up taking on too much water and needing the toilet. Now, there are portaloos around the course, but it didn't. In my case, it did mean eventually sometimes you might perhaps use that water up, as part of your hydration. I didn't, and I needed to go to the loo, so I had to. Not that I was particularly running for a sub 4 this time round, but I did have to stop and spend a few minutes
Yeah.
at a portaloo. So
So for anyone listening,
just if you're
there's water stations every 2 or 3 miles, which is quite a lot. And if
yeah,
you are thinking, oh, I should drink water at every single station, then
yeah,
you might end up actually not overhydrating, but maybe just it resulting in you needing to stop for the toilet,
yeah.
which isn't the end of the world. But
No, no, it's not.
and
No.
also there's 1,500 portaloos, so hopefully that puts people's mind at ease about like, oh, what if it's too busy?
Yeah.
You know, that's a huge amount.
Yeah, I didn't really have to wait very long. Obviously, I think I spent 2 or 3 minutes, and it did cost me a sub 4. But if I hadn't have gone to the toilet, I don't think I'd have been in a position to run a sub 4 anyway, because I was desperate for the loo. So
Yeah.
it had to be done. So yes, so certainly be mindful of kind of when you're taking on water. I think after the finish, the logistics of getting across London after the finish, and the idea was to meet family down at, there is designated areas for you to meet family, and that's you can make your way over to, it's all kind of signposted for you depending on your number, where you meet your family, and that's all great. But can your family get there? It really depends on where they've positioned themselves. So if you've got people with you who are going to be, you're going to want to see at the finish, then make sure that they're somewhere that they can with it get to by walking, because they do some of the tube stations had to be closed due to the sheer volume of people.
Mm.
So actually our family couldn't get to see me at the finish, so I didn't have anybody there at the finish. So there's another thing to be mindful of. Just think about, so if you're taking family who you think are going to be perhaps seeing you in the first few miles, trotting across London, seeing you somewhere else, and then trotting across to see you at the finish, the logistics of that are quite, I'd say that that's unrealistic. And really, it would be better if they position themselves in one place and, you know, make that place perhaps somewhere that they can get to the finish line afterwards to meet with you. Because, I then had to make my way across London to find family,
Mm.
and doing that after a 26.2 mile run, um, with tired legs, and feeling a little bit disorientated, as you can sometimes do after that kind of exertion. That wasn't a nice bit, really, because of the crowds and the trying to get in the tube and all that kind of thing. It would have been much nicer had perhaps the family been down somewhere near the finish, and I'd have met them at the designated spot, and we'd have then made our way somewhere across London together, and I'd have had someone to perhaps just ease the burden of
Yeah,
that.
that makes sense. So instead of trying to jump and spread yourself too thin because of how busy it is, maybe pick one spot and then make that easy to get to the finish line. Because a lot of the time, the really special moment is, you know, around the finish line, and to see your family at that point, I think is the most beneficial and the most special. So that makes a lot of sense.
There's one more thing actually that's just come to mind, and that's the fact that given the number of people running, it's impossible not to do some weaving. And I know that's a golden rule, don't weave in and out of people, because you end up running further. And that's exactly what I did. So actually I ran 26.83 miles instead of 26.2. So just there's not really anything I would recommend to help with that, other than just be mindful that when you're doing your training, you probably are going to run that little bit further than 26.2 miles, just because of the numbers of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can be wasting valuable energy there if you are constantly trying to speed up, slow down to get to weave round people, and you are adding
Yeah.
some distance, I guess. But yeah, that's a good point as well. So yeah, that's it's made me want to run it, hearing about your experience running London. And to anybody who's running it this year, massive good luck to you. You're gonna have an amazing time. Trust your training and just
Yeah.
give it your best and enjoy. And anybody spectating, good luck to you as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. And, when you've got your medal on, you'll then get round London. I think it's until 8 o'clock in the evening for free. So you'll get on the tube and you'll be let through because you've got the medal on. So that's a nice little Brucey bonus from the good people of Transport for
That's
Greater
worth,
London, or
yeah,
whatever it
that's
may be
worth running
called.
26.2 miles alone.
And I think there are some eating establishments that kind of, will give you a free drink or free pizza, or, so it's probably worth looking.
Yeah, milk it for all you
Look,
can get.
Well, yeah, it's a, it's a fair old achievement. And any marathon is a fair old achievement, but to run London is a special achievement. So
Right, well, let's leave it there, and we'll speak to you all soon. We hope you enjoyed it.
yeah, if you run in London, have fun, go smash it. It's an amazing experience.